that God in eternity looked upon me, foreseeing my fallenness, my pride, my sin, and said, I want that man in my family. I'll do anything to get him in my family. I will pay for him to be in my family with my son's life. That's love, folks. That is mega, off the charts love.
So today, we've been walking through these different things over the last number of weeks, the love covenant. And really, in all honesty, when I say the love covenant, everybody thinks about like dating and relationships. But the truth is, this is not really what the series is about. The series primarily is about understanding what agape is. In the original language, to those people in that day, when they used that word, what did they mean? And I know, even today, in our modern day and age, translating is so difficult, even with all of our tools. And so language, different times, different seasons in history, words can mean different things. And not only do words mean different things as time progresses, but when we also try to understand an ancient idea and we try to translate it, sometimes we don't have words that match words that you find in the original language. This is why it is so incredibly difficult at times to convey certain parts of the scripture. So for example, in the New Testament, in Greek specifically, you've got numerous words for the word love. You've got eros, you've got phileo, you've got agape, even a variance of them like agapeo. You have these different variants of this original word, and they don't exactly mean the same thing, though we translate them all into the same word. We talked about this a lot week number 1, and I want to just go back to that for a second to make sure that we're using the same idea with these, right? So understanding, defining our terms. Hopefully you hear what I intend for you to hear when I use the word love. 1 Corinthians 13, we talked about this a number of weeks ago. So now faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. When I say the word love, different things are going to pop into your mind. So in the original language, it's now faith, hope, and love abide. In the original language, it's pistis, elpis, and agape, are the Greek words, faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is agape. That's what it says in Greek. When I say the word love to you, most of the time what pops into your head, and it really should, because this is how we use it in our modern language, it is affection. So whether I am saying, hey, I love your shoes, which I never say, but if I did say, hey, I love your shoes, it's affection. I like your shoes. Something inside me, I have a little affection for them. If I say, hey, I love the Colts, there's a little affection in me for the Colts. If I love the Pacers, right, there's a little affection for the Pacers. All the way down to like a premarital couple that's sitting in my office and cannot wait to get married, and they lean over and they go, I love you. What they mean is, I have a massive amount of affection for you right now. This isn't necessarily wrong, but that's not exactly what agape is. It can be included in agape, but agape is more than that. In fact, some of my favorite authors and thinkers, Lewis is the one that we used a couple of weeks ago, he thinks that the word agape, though we translate it love, we should translate it into a new word because we don't understand love the way it was intended to be understood when they used the word agape back then. Lewis thinks that the word should be translated charity. And these three remain, faith, hope, and charity. And the greatest of these is charity. I've been working to unpack this, and there's a number of, Jonathan Edwards, he's another great author, thinker, writer, Christian historian guy. And I love his work, pastor. And so in our own home, we've kind of come up with a working definition when we come across this word. So when it's like husbands love your wives, husbands have charity for your wives. So in my home, even with my own kids, I'm trying to inject the words to my kids so they will understand it rightly. So this is kind of our working definition that we've been using. I shared this a couple weeks ago again. Agape is this. So agape, these three remain, pistis, elpis, and agape, but the greatest of these is agape. Agape, or charity love, is acting to the benefit of something or someone independent of their ability or willingness to reciprocate. So what this means is I'm going to do good and act rightly to somebody or into something independent of their ability to respond in kind. I'm going to do the right thing. In fact, if you go back and you love languages, you go back all the way to Hebrew. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And you look at this, even linguistically, the idea behind it is God, this wonderful family Trinity, looks into nothing. So as Christian theology goes down the line a little further, and Latin begins to get into this, right? And then we come up with this phrase called ex nihilo, out of nothing God created. The idea in the text is, it is the love of God that looked into nothing. Nothing isn't giving him love back at this point. I mean, it's not reciprocating anything at the moment. It's nothing. And it was the charity of God that made everything, that set the world in motion, that breathed into the dust and brought out life. Literally, the engine of all, according to the word, is charity. Doing good into something independent of its ability to even reciprocate. And then the culmination of this is the cross. Jesus hangs up there, and as he's been beaten and bleeding out, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Charity, 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 charity. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Charity. Do good unto somebody or into something independent of its ability or their ability to reciprocate. With this in mind, and we've been talking about this, so that idea of love in marriage, that idea of love in being single, that idea of love, now we're going to talk about that idea of love in friendships. In friendships. Friendships. The big tent that I want to put up, so this overarching idea I want to put above all of this is the same one from last week, and it's this. Heaven is perfect, intimate, and this is a huge deal, perfect, intimate, relational harmony, and God hates loneliness. Heaven is perfect, intimate, and relational harmony, and God hates loneliness. You were made from relationship, and you are made for relationship. I mean, loneliness is literally like an antithesis of who God is. It's another narrative of what it is. God is Trinity. He is in relationship. From before time and then after time ends, family will remain, relationship will remain. No wonder we long to be in good, healthy relationships. Now, every time I share this idea, somebody pops up and says, wait a minute, in the Bible, doesn't God like pull people away and get them alone? Yes, alone to be with him. Alone to be with him. So with this in mind, let's talk about friendships. Before we get into biblical understanding of friendships, let's make sure that we're using the same word the same way in our modern language. So when I say friend, what do you hear? What do you think of? What goes through your mind when I say the word friend? I asked this to the staff the other day. We were talking about it. It's kind of fun. And posed 3 questions. They responded to these. I'll give them to you. What is the purpose of friendship from a pop cultural perspective? Okay, so this is what they gave me, just defining our term. They said this. So the cultural perspective of friendship would be somebody that you have a common interest with. You guys enjoy the same things, the Colts, the Pacers, whatever it might be, same things. It's maybe a common enjoyment or an activity that you like to do. It's a like-minded, maybe you have like a same political view. You like to get together and just like bolster each other's point of view because it's pretty much the same. So same politics, whatever it might be. People who agree, and again, friendship was the purpose of friendship from a pop cultural perspective. People who agree with you and support your perspectives and choices. So you would say you are friends with somebody if they agree with your presuppositions in life. Maybe even people that you don't have a great relationship with, but as long as they agree with your presuppositions, you would say, that's my friend. All right, so what about this? Going in a little deeper, another question I asked, what are the pop cultural definitions of successfully hanging out with people? I know this is worded kind of funny, just hang with me. When you go out and spend time with somebody, so let's say you go to like B-dubs and you watch a game. Or somebody invites you to, whatever, go hang out at a party. It's like a birthday party or something, get to meet somebody. Or maybe it's even like a first date. When you leave that encounter, what goes through your mind when you think, was that good? Did I have fun? What goes through your mind? What makes it a successful time of hanging out together? The biggest one that hit me with this, I was talking to one of my friends who happens to be a missionary from another country, like grew up in another country and is a missionary from another culture, so not American at all. And he mentioned to me, he's like, hey, Mike, I'd love to get our families together and eat and pray and read the Bible. And I thought, I have never had, that's interesting. I wonder what my teenage son would think. Hey, we're going to get together with this other family, and we're going to spend the next 4 hours praying and reading the Bible together, right? We'd probably leave, and in our Western mindset, we'd be thinking, that was not fun. But what is it that drives us to measure worth of spending time with people? So these are some of the things, the pop cultural definitions of successfully hanging out with somebody. Here's some of the things that the team gave me. The primary question is, was this fun? I mean, that's so true. That's so American of us. Did I actually have a good time? Like literally enjoyment of it. And even that statement is so shaped by our cultural expectations. Was I perceived, this was a great statement, was I perceived in a way that I wanted to be perceived? And this is true. You don't have to pretend. When you get in the car after hanging out with somebody, you like have the conversations again in your head. You know you do this. Maybe even you say them out loud. So you get in the car, you're driving home, and as you're driving home, you're even re-saying that. I believe that I think, wait, why? You're not talking to anybody. You're just rehashing in your head. And what you're doing is you're hoping that you were perceived in the light that you wanted to, put yourself forward, or a way in which you wanted to put yourself forward. You hopefully wore the mask that you wanted to wear. Were you really as big of a Colts fan as you were trying to be? The truth is, the Colts, but you really want to look like a good Colts fan. You really want to look like a good Pacers fan. You really want to look like you're not needy. You really want to look like you're whatever it might be. That's a question that goes through our mind. So was it a successful time hanging out with somebody? The question in your mind is, did I put on the mask that I wanted to, and did I wear it well? Another thing, was it successful hanging out with somebody, is this. Am I happy now? Not just was it fun, but am I happy? And those kind of overlap for sure. Another question that I pose to the staff is this: why would you stop being friends? So in our pop culture, why would you stop being friends with someone? Here are the answers that were given. Some of these are really good. They annoyed or offended you. I mean, that's like the primary driver for stop being friends with somebody. I'm annoyed or offended by them. Another one would be this: they weren't any fun. The people weren't any fun to be around. And again, all that's defined by our culture. Another one might be this: you met new people who are cooler. You found a better social network to connect with. Whatever you want to be, or whatever you're trying to make yourself into, you found another group of people that you think is going to help you get there better. So you leave this group and go with another one. Another one just might be distance. You might move away. That's a good answer. Another one might be interests change while you stop being friends. And then ultimately, the biggest one is this: conflict of some type is usually what defines the breakup of a friendship. The word that I heard over and over again was the word toxic. They became toxic. In almost 20 years of ministry, I'm beginning to think that we don't have the same definition of toxic. When most people say toxic, they mean this person doesn't support me or tell me what I want to hear anymore. I think there really are toxic relationships. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. But is it possible that some of the hard conversations that you have with people are actually good for you? And that people that challenge your political views might be good for you? If nothing else, just refining what you believe and making sure it's accurate. Do you think getting together with people and having somebody go, you know what, let's spend 2 hours in prayer rather than watching a football game, and you're going, this isn't fun, but maybe it's good for you? The definition of toxic can't be not fun. We have to give a better definition to that. We're going to come back to that in just a little bit. With this in mind, let's go into the text, and we're going to go all the way back to the Old Testament, and we want to look at Jonathan and David, examining a relationship from the Bible. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts here from the scripture, and then we're going to walk through this together. 1 Samuel 18, 1 through 5, we're going to start there. As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. Notice the strong language here. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul, and Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Now this is actually right after, this is David and Goliath. So that battle happens. They watch David put everything on the line to stand up for God, even if it meant the loss of his life. They watch all this play out. Notice how this draws this passion out of Jonathan. Verse 3, then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor and even his sword and his bow and his belt. That's a really important statement. We're going to come back to that in a moment too. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Jumping forward to 1 Samuel 20:17, we'll notice that Jonathan and David are constantly making these promises with each other. And Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Jumping forward a little bit further, this is at Jonathan's death, 2 Samuel 1:25-26. How the mighty have fallen, David is stating, in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lay slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women. What does he mean by this? We have a tendency in our modern day and age to inject sex into any passionate relationship. If it's passionate, it's got to be sexual. This isn't true. In fact, when you look through history, you will find that it wasn't uncommon for even like missionaries getting ready to go on the mission field to stand together almost like a wedding in front of a crowd and make a covenant with each other, better or worse, sickness and health. Even if it costs me my life, whatever it takes, I will go, I will march in, and I'll be faithful to you on this mission. And then they turn around and make the same covenant back. I was trying to think in our modern day, are there any places where you see massive, passionate commitment, true, deep commitment that's not sexual? Because we know it exists. And this is what popped into my mind. When I was in Dallas, I had the awesome opportunity of working with military vets. I got to do counseling, not the primary counseling, but after they did their normal evaluation, I could do follow-up meetings with them because of the education I had. And so I got to know a lot of these amazing guys that have fought in war. And I noticed something with military people, especially the ones that have actually been in war. Not just the ones stationed at places, but those that have actually seen war. The others have this too, but it's very strong in the ones that have seen war. There's a gentleman in my office, and I share this with his permission. He wouldn't mind at all. And he was telling me, he was saying, the movies often don't portray real war very well. He was with the EOD, the group that searches for bombs, and did a number of tours over there. And he said, I remember kind of the first time the bomb went off, like one of the bombs went off. And he said, I was knocked unconscious. And when I came to, my ears were ringing so loud I couldn't hear anything. I was very disoriented just because of the pressure from it all. I couldn't see. There was dust everywhere. I mean, everywhere. You're just in total shock from the moment. He said it was hard to breathe. I remember even like trying to catch my breath and coughing, and I can't hear anything and I can't see anything. He said the first thing I did is I remember reaching down to see if I still had my legs. And he said, it's not just that. I mean, I remember being out on the field and all of a sudden, fire starts coming across the line and you watch one of your friends go down. And I know what it's like to try to sneak out somebody that's bleeding out, a brother in arms, and pull them out of there. I've watched my friends die. I've been on the battlefield multiple tours. And then he made this statement to me. He said, I love those guys so much, those of us that made it home. If one of them was in need, and he didn't have a lot, he's like, if one of them was in need and they needed me, I would sell my car, I would sell my house, I would do anything I could to go be with them, whatever it takes. Man, they have given so much for me. I would give anything for them. All that I have, I would give to my brothers in arms. It was massive, passionate commitment and had nothing to do with sex. And so when you read really liberal theology and they try to write sex into everything, that is false. Jonathan and David had much love for each other. Those warriors had seen much together. And they held each other accountable, as we'll find out, to pursuing the truth and righteousness of God. I want to notice something. I want you to know something from this. Jonathan is royalty and David is a nobody. Jonathan didn't pick David to become his friend because it would increase his social status. Jonathan, I think it's so awesome the way it's even worded in the text. It is Jonathan making commitments to David. Now, when we look back at it, we see David as King David, but at this time, Jonathan would have been way more important. And he was the one looking at the no-name person from nowhere, shepherd boy, who's knitting his heart to him. Why do you choose your friends? It's abundantly clear in this text, Jonathan chose David because David had a heart for the Lord. Why do you choose your friends? Another thing that we notice in this, everybody wants a Jonathan, and everybody wants to be a David. I love the way Charles Spurgeon says it. He says, any man can selfishly desire to have a Jonathan, but he is on the right track who desires to find a David to whom he can be a Jonathan. Here's what I mean by this. It's so true in our day and age where we're all very self-focused and we all think that we're amazing. We want to go about life and we're hoping that Jonathans are going to come along beside us and go, oh, you're amazing. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, without you, I wouldn't know. You need to be a Jonathan rather than always assume that you're a David. My best friends that I have come across were people that I submitted myself to. When I was in first years of ministry, I was in Iowa, still working on my ordination, and there was an older gentleman in the church. Now, most of the friends that I had spent time with until that point were people that liked to play the same sports that I like to play, people that were mostly my same age, people that thought like me, talked like me, act like me. Those are the people I mostly spent time with. And I bumped into this older gentleman, highly educated, brilliant mind. He didn't like sports, and he was open about it. We were definitely not the same age. I'm only a couple years out of school working on ordination, and he had, long on the other end of life. But the one thing I noticed in him was a massive passion for the Lord. And I remember the first time I got home and I was like, honey, I got this crazy idea. Tonight, we're going to go hang out with, the last name was the Johnsons. I was like, we're going to go hang out with the Johnsons. She's like, who? I was like, in church, the older couple that always sits in the back, we're going to go hang out with them. She was like, are you recruiting them for something? No, I'm not recruiting for something. Are you, advice? I was like, no, I just want to go hang out with them. We're going to go have dinner. They're friends with us, but they're old people. And so we talked about that. It was kind of funny. So we go over there, and our first night hanging out with this older couple, I realized all of these binding agents that I had were tiny, and all of a sudden, this massive passion that he had for the Lord, I wanted. And I remember sitting with him and saying, listen, I just want to be friends with you. I want to see into your life. I'd love to get coffee. I'd love to build a relationship with you because there's something alive in you for the Lord that I want too. And I kindled one of the most important relationships in my life, one of my best friends. And our binding agent was not age, was not activity, was not weightlifting, was not sports. It wasn't any of those things. It was the Lord. Now here's the crazy cool thing. That binding agent is bigger than life itself. And 10,000 years from now, we can still be best friends over our binding agent. Let me say it like this. The thing that binds you to your friends, the worth and depth of it, is directly connected to the worth and depth of what the relationship can grow to. And I know this firsthand. I can look back at my life, man, the not so good pre-Jesus days. I always get nervous talking about these days because I can tell you, if your binding agent is a sports bar and beer, when that's gone, so are those relationships. The worth and depth of the binding agent is directly connected to the worth and depth of what the relationship can become. The question is, where do we find this? Where do we find this? Mark 3:32-35 says this, and everybody's going, okay, this is great. I love what you're saying, but where can I find these relationships? Where can I get them? In Mark it says this, a crowd was sitting around him and they told him, this is Jesus, and they told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Come on, Jesus, they're out there. Where are you at? And then Jesus responds with, who are my mothers and my brothers, he asked. Then he looked at those seated in the circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will, God's will, is my brother and sister and mother. Now what he's doing here is he's not devaluing his blood relatives. He's just increasing the spiritual binding agent of God. And when we have that common binding agent, that outlasts all of these temporary things. You were made from beautiful, eternal relationship, Trinity, God creates, and you are being called like a deep tone echoing. There's something in us that longs to find that again. And the only type of relationship that can fulfill that is one that's based on something with the right depth, the right activity, right depth, that even outlasts time itself. I would say that one of the best places, if you're going, man, I'd love relationships like that, but I don't know where to find them, I don't know where to get them, I would say start by looking around this room. Go to the places where spiritual activity is happening and say, Lord, let me be vulnerable enough and willing to walk in relationship and see what happens. This leads me to a whole lot of questions that we're going to try to respond to, which is the difficulty in developing them. What about toxic relationships? We're going to walk through a number of different things here. I want to start by saying this. Remember, for most of us, we think it's about being David. We think it's about being David. We want to be David. We want people to come and say, you're amazing, I want to follow you. That's what we want. We think it's about David, being David. For most of us, it's actually about being a Jonathan. Stop waiting for great relationships to come to you. Find your David who loves the Lord. This takes time. It takes submission. It takes commitment. And it is difficult. I think the reasons that this is really hard really hinge on just a couple of ideas. One, our culture values independence. I mean, independence is baked into our DNA. We are the result of pulling away the United States of America. We are the result of pulling away. The Protestant church is the result of pulling and breaking away. Our whole Western mindset, we pull away from our families. I was talking with a friend of mine who's from Europe, and they always thought it was really interesting how we expect all of our children to move away and go do their own thing. Our whole DNA in the West is based on separation, pulling away, priding ourselves on independence. But it's important to stop and go, you know what? Though there are times to pull away, we should never pull away from what is truly godly. We should press into it. And sometimes that very independent streak in us pulls us out of a small group or out of a D group or out of a relationship when what you actually need to do is submit to it. And that takes time, vulnerability, and it's difficult. All right, I want to speak briefly to toxic relationships. I think in all honesty that this is really difficult to wrap your mind around. First of all, because so many of our situations are so different. I'm going to invite Josh up. We're going to be done in a moment here too. So many of our situations are so different. And toxic for one person is not necessarily the same as toxic for another. What I'm going to share with you, you won't like. Because I don't like it. And I'm guessing you're going to be a little bit like me. Luke 6:32 says this, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. Henry Nouwen says this, Jesus shows us that true love, the love that comes from God, makes no distinction between friends and foes, between people who are for us and people who are against us. God makes no such distinction. I mean, when Jesus comes and he dies on the cross, he literally is speaking to the people who are the bad guys, and he's asking for forgiveness for them. I think the first thing to do if you think that you're in a toxic relationship is to pray for them. I think that there are times you're in a toxic relationship and you need to not be with them. I get that too. I mean, I've worked with enough people who are in relationships, dating, whatever, and they're doing very inappropriate things together and they need to have space. I'm down, I'm okay with space. But you can still, even just through prayer, have charity for. There are people that I've been around. I remember worked with a couple not many years ago who had a high school kid who was, an absolute drug addict mess, stealing from their family. The home was unsafe. For their younger siblings, the home was unsafe. And they absolutely needed to divide that out and put this child into special care. And so separation doesn't have to mean hate. So the family's like, what do we do? Are we failing? I'm like, no, it's best for the child and it's best for you to do this, but you can absolutely pray for them. You can absolutely make sure that these people have in their life the things that they need. And if you are in a relationship today, and remember, and you think it's toxic, remember the definer of success does not just mean are you happy? Because sometimes the most beautiful charity is seen in the places that it's needed the most. If you are in a relationship and you think this might be toxic and I maybe need to get out of it, I would say this: pray for the person and seek counsel. Instead of just emotionally responding to a situation, find solid biblical counsel. Sit down, walk it through with a counselor, with great people who love the Lord. Older folks are awesome at this. Love the old people. The older I get, the more I love the old people. The people that don't think that old people are needed are the young people who are still dumb. The older I get, the more I so value the wisdom and experience of the people that have gone before me. You need to be friends with mature old adults who are sound in mind and can think and help you walk through difficult things. You need that in your life. So you can sit down with them and go, help me work through this. So if you think you're in a toxic relationship, one, pray for them right away. Go before the Lord, pray for them, pray that God would rescue a heart. Two, seek wise counsel on how you should respond. You know what? If you battle with being an alcoholic and the person that's toxic to you is a drunk, it might be wise for you to separate. But seek counsel in that process. Make sure you're not just responding emotionally, because we do that way too often in our culture. It's just an emotional response. Here's the last thing I would say. I have an accountability group. We've been friends since high school. A couple of us are now in ministry. Another one owns a landscaping company as we've all grown up. Another one has done very well in the oil industry. When we were about 17 years old, we gathered together. We were at a youth camp, and we sit, and I remember this is like a tree house. High school students, and our youth pastor, who's now a professor at IW, Eddie Shigley, walks up into this tree house with us, and he says, you guys need to not just be friends, you need to be accountability partners. And we're like, okay, what does this mean? And he starts circling the little room up there, it wasn't a room, it was outside the treehouse, but that little place up there. And he said, first of all, transparency, consistency. When you meet, you are faithful to be there. Don't quit. Don't say you're gonna do it and then don't show up. Be there, be faithful. In your mind, you meeting together is more important than any job opportunity. It's more, of course, that'd be later in life, more important than it's more important than sports. It's more important than a girlfriend. It's more important that he's going through all this like teenage stuff. It's more important than all that. You getting together is so very important. Treat it like it's actually important. Make it happen. And then I remember him talking with us. He said, then we want transparency. So we started to try to be transparent, which was kind of comical. I'm like, I guess I got kind of angry when the coach benched me, and I kind of wanted to be. And Eddie was like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean like this. Did you look at porn this week? Of course, like deer in the headlights, thinking, oh, wow, this is a different level of transparency. I did not know what you meant by transparent. And so he starts asking pointed questions to each of us. You're in a dating relationship. How are you physically? Are you honoring God? What are you doing? And so we learned to be transparent. But it wasn't just learning to be transparent with each other. It went to another level yet again. Then he goes, you can't just share, because then he visits us a number of months later, and we were really good at transparency and really bad at actually doing anything about it. So it's like, yeah, my life's a mess. I saw this and I did this, and oh, me too, I'm doing it too. And he was like, that's not it either. The question is, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna help that person accomplish or change? I remember in college when we were circling the room, one of the guys was battling with a porn addiction, and I was thinking to Eddie in my head, what are we gonna actually do to help this person? And one of the guys said, okay, this is gonna be crazy and a lot of extra work for us, but what if we lock his computer and we're the only ones that have the password to it? He can't get onto it without us present. And I remember thinking in my head, this is gonna be so inconvenient. And we did it. And he broke his porn addiction. And he's married with kids and honoring God in a great way today. And it was incredibly inconvenient. So one of the guys in that room, Dave, we still stay in touch on a regular basis. We're getting together this summer again. Dave starts feeling convicted in his heart. There was a guy that we knew in high school. I haven't seen this guy since high school. It was another guy that we went to high school with, who was arrested for child pornography and is spending a 30-year sentence in prison. He wasn't a part of our accountability group, just a guy that we had known in high school. I'd not seen him since then. And when I heard about it, it's so gross. Like in your heart, it just feels so wrong that you just kind of, I remember years ago, it's been 16, 17 years ago when I heard this. He's in his sentence now. I remember thinking, you deserve it, good luck, right? It's that gross part of your heart, terrible thing. And Dave starts sending to our group, he goes, I don't know, God's just convicted me in a deep way. We always talk about loving the least, the lost, and the last, the people and culture that are hated. I just feel so heavy in my heart that I'm supposed to go visit this guy. And then he sends us another message. We're going back and forth texting. He sends another message to the group and he goes, I just want you to know, I'm gonna take vacation time. I'm gonna drive to the federal prison and I'm gonna go spend time with him. And I think you're supposed to do it too. And I remember in the group thinking, Dave, come on, man. I am busy. I've got all this stuff that's going. We've got all this multicultural things we're trying to get going. We're the Burmese with the refugees and the new campuses that we're trying to get started, all this stuff. I don't have time. And I've got 4 kids. I've got 4 kids. And I'm having a hard time just doing vacations with them. How am I gonna pull this off? I don't know. And Dave gets a hold of this guy, starts corresponding with him, then gives our addresses to this guy, and then this guy starts writing us. For the last 3 months, I've been getting letters from a guy in prison for child pornography, writing to me, sharing about how over the last 17 years, God is rocking his world and changing his heart, and how he's so sorry, and he's so convicted because he was such a mess, and he's pouring his heart out, and these letters to me, and I got one on Easter, I just wept. So the end of May, I'm taking vacation. And so are all the rest of the guys. We're driving from all over this crazy country, gathering together at this federal prison in the middle of nowhere to go spend a few days with a guy that we knew in high school who destroyed his life, but desperately needs charity. You see, even as the senior pastor, you think that I'm the David and I want Jonathan's? But the biggest life changers in my life are the Davids, where I'm the Jonathan. And I see the love. The reckless, relentless love in my accountability partner to honor the work of Jesus. He's not even a pastor, and he gets to love better than we do. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, I will make the time to honor God in this. And I take the role of Jonathan. And I say, Dave, I follow the love of Jesus that's in you because I need that too. You want to talk about another bonding agent for our group of friends? I pray that you become so aware of how small and empty and tiny your non-God-honoring relationships are, that you are willing to actually connect and commit to grow some great ones. Because I'm telling you, they are so worth it. They are so worth it. What I want you to do now, man, those guys, my mind just flooded with all these memories with those guys, brothers. I want you to pull out the Next Steps cards in the back of the chair in front of you, okay? And we're gonna wrestle this to the ground. You can't just hear a sermon. You gotta ask the question, what does this mean for me? My context, what's it mean for me? Get the Next Steps cards out. If God is speaking to you, you need to make a decision to follow him. That relentless love that I'm talking about is tiny compared to what Jesus did on the cross. He is after you. He loves you more than you can even imagine. If you need to make a decision to follow Jesus, mark it on the card. Recommit your life. Stop standing in the in-between. The other thing I would say this is, maybe you need to make a decision in your life to commit to a small group or a D group or whatever it might be and go, you know what, I need to commit to this. I need to actually be faithful to it. Because maybe something better than more money could grow out of it. Or a small group, whatever it might be. Maybe there is a toxic person that you just want us to pray over too. And you don't know what to do with it. And distance might be the right thing in a God-honoring way. And you just need to write that name down as somebody that you're going, man, I need prayer over this. I don't even know how to respond to it. And maybe your commitment is to actually seek out wise counsel on how to handle it. Actually seek out the wise counsel on how to handle it. I just want you over the next few moments, and maybe what you need to write is, I need a real friend. God provide it. And maybe it begins with you being a faithful friend, being Jonathan. But grab the Next Steps cards, whatever God's speaking into your heart, fill it out. What's he saying in your heart? Even if it's a random prayer request, we pray for these all the time too, but write it out, fill it out. What's God speaking in your heart? Write it out. Go before the Lord, spend time with him. What's he speaking in your spirit? Move the ball forward. It's hard for me to do a sermon without a sports analogy somewhere. Move the ball forward. Spend some time before the Lord. What's he speaking to you? Go ahead and write. We just want to thank you for watching the sermon online. If God is working in your heart, we would love to hear about it. You can go online, www.encountertrinity.com/nextstepscard. You can fill out information there. Let us know what God is doing in your heart. If you need help with anything, we would love to help. Counseling, we would love to do anything that we can to help you go to that next level spiritually. When you fill this out, it goes to one of our pastors. It is private, and we will take care of that information to the best of our ability. We love you, we care about you, and we want to see God do great things in your life. Have a great day.